All right. Yeah. So I'm just kind of making this because I'm bored, and I'm pretending that I'm actually producing worthwhile content for this channel that's dead right now because my PC is barely a thing. But next month I'm probably gonna have a new rig built, so there will be more content of actual substance at that point, hopefully. But anyway, this is about the recent Sony digital press conference, I guess. The one, it was meant to be the talk that they were going to give at GDC, but because of the coronavirus pandemic, pretty much everything that was ever going to happen in the history of humanity has been canceled, and that event was one of them. Pretty much everything that gaming related has been canceled or postponed or whatever. So right now, you've got a lot of people adapting, and this Sony did this virtual thing, and they just uploaded this video. So honestly, I think a lot of the disappointment is unrealistic because this wasn't meant to be a console reveal. That they weren't. It wasn't meant to be like, oh, this is what it looks like. This is what the controller looks like. Here's a bunch of games. That's not what GDC is really about. GDC is about networking and talking to developers and talking about the actual technology that's driving the new technology, the new systems, or whatever it may be. So the fact that it was a technical deep dive, that's not really a cause for concern. Really, it's just people being idiots and not knowing how to read and just getting overhyped, and that's why a lot of people are disappointed. But I'm disappointed, but not because of the technology. I'm disappointed because the only thing that I was really looking forward to with the PS5 was the backwards compatibility. And not even the PS4 backwards compatibility, because I literally skipped that entire generation. I never bought a PS4. I played L1 a few times that some of my friends had, and it was just whatever, But at that point, I was already like kind of just sticking to PC and the PS3 that I already had. So I don't even care about the PS4 backwards compatibility, and even then, they kind of dropped the ball with that because they didn't the way that they talked about it. It was really just not well said. They didn't really clarify exactly what they meant with this whole, oh, we've tested 100 games, because the way that they said it, they made it sound like there's only going to be 100 games that actually work or playable at the beginning, at the launch. But a lot of people are interpreting it as like they only tested 100 with the boost mode, and that the legacy mode is going to be like universally functioning or something. I mean, who the fuck knows? It was just, I don't know why, out of everything in that conference, that was the one thing that was just so muddled and ambiguous. So they're probably going to want to clarify that pretty soon, but I don't really fucking care about that. The thing that I cared about was the rumors about universal backwards compatibility. And, it was too good to be true, especially because of Sony's recent track record from the past generation being so awful when it came to backwards compatibility. Back in the PS3 days, even PS2, they went out of their way to have backwards compatibility with whatever the previous system was, and they maintained that with PS3, at least initially, whenever they still had a couple of the PS2's processors on there on the motherboard. But they got rid of those for cost-saving measures, and then they started doing the PS2 Classics line, which, depending on the game, it could have been decent or bad or just barely playable when it was a software emulator. But then when the PS4 came out, they were like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to have any backwards compatibility, not natively. You can't play PS1 games, you can't play PS2 games, you can't play PS3 games. The only way you can play any of those games is if you either stream them with PlayStation Now, which isn't even that good, and never really was a good value, or if you buy some of the overpriced PS2 Classics lineups, of which there's not really many on there to begin with, only a few dozen, and they abandoned it pretty much like right after they introduced it. So, and it's not even a matter of technical feasibility, because the PS5 has a fucking Zen 2 octa-core in it with SMT, clocked at over 3 gigahertz, which is more than enough for PS2 emulation, way more than enough for PS1 emulation. It's completely effortless. Even PS3 emulation would be pretty easy quote unquote easy. They would still have to like bust their asses making a proprietary emulator for it, but they've done it before with other systems. They've got the documentation. It's not like the hobbyists who do that with their own free time. And those guys, the hobbyists, they have to reverse engineer everything. They don't have documentation. And if they do have some documentation, it's only going to be like a very small amount. Sony, they don't have to fucking do that. They have all of the documentation because they are Sony. They built these systems. They've got it on hand. And they've got brilliant engineers. They get paid a shitload of money to do this type of stuff. And yet, so far, it's not really set in stone because they just didn't talk about it. And most of the things they were talking about at in the video were things that were relevant to actual developers, not necessarily consumers. But the way that they presented it, it was like some weird hybrid conference where it was like targeted at consumers, but also like techies and developers. It was just such a weird fucking thing compared to Microsoft, who just kind of went out and just told you everything that you wanted to hear and showed off the console and did all this other stuff. And Microsoft this generation, they've been making it a point that it's going to have universal backwards compatibility. It's not going to have 100%. It's not everything's going to be playable. There's always going to be some titles that just don't fucking work properly for whatever reason. It's always been like that on every console that's ever had backwards compatibility. That's just the way it is. Some shit's just not going to get through. But yeah, if you get an Xbox Series X, you can play software natively going all the way back to the original Xbox. With the PS5, the only thing that they said so far is that you can play some PS4 games, not all of them, and the way that they've said it so far, it seems to imply that even when it comes to Legacy, it's not going to have like the majority of the library playable. So it's just such a weird conference in terms of the messaging. He spent like literally 30 minutes talking about the audio. I love audio. I love the phenomenon of audio. I love it when developers actually make some proper 3D audio in games, but it's just so rare. Audio is really, when it comes to positioning and depth and just anything of substance with audio in video games for the past 20 years, it's mostly been pretty fucking bad. You can talk about the sound clarity all you want, but how many fucking shooters have you played, first person or third, where the sound is just awful? The mixing is bad. Certain sounds are just way too loud. Certain sounds are barely audible, like footsteps barely being audible, and even when they are audible or gunshots, they don't actually sound accurate in terms of the positioning, both vertically and horizontally, especially when it comes to depth and just, sound traveling through objects or bouncing off of objects. It's just incredibly rare to see any game from any genre do it properly. So that was the one thing I appreciated from the conference, talking about the audio, the ray trace 3-dimensional spatial audio. So that's actually really cool. And I'm really cool, the SSD, the bespoke implementation with the, they've decided to not just do like, oh, we support SSD. They went way beyond that. It's incredibly fast. The data transfer speeds, the read speeds, the write speeds, the seek. They've got their own implementation so that they don't have to be beholden to any of the bottlenecks that we have on PC and the currently existing consoles. So that's a real game changer. That's actually a really big deal, but that's not what I was just looking forward to because they've already confirmed all that shit. They talked about it before. So this fucking conference was pretty much useless when it comes to new information. Even developers know about this stuff too. So all they did was just kind of go a bit more in depth. And that's whatever, that's not really, it's just, I'm not upset about like, oh, fucking, what does the console look like? How much does it cost? When is it going to come out? I don't fucking care because that's just stuff that you're going to wait for. It doesn't matter what it looks like as long as the cooling system is good. I don't fucking care what it looks like. I don't care what they call it. I really just care about the software. And when it comes to software, both in terms of backwards compatibility and native games, there's nothing compelling on either system when it comes to like actual current gen games or next generation technically, because those systems aren't out yet. I haven't seen anything remotely impressive, not even from tech demos. So I don't really give a shit about either of these consoles, but I'm really into backwards compatibility, not just to be able to play all of the games that you already have in your backlog, whether it's on disc or digital download from the PlayStation Store, but the fact that these new consoles can give some native enhancements like internal resolution boosts. Imagine playing a fucking PS1 or PS2 or even a PS3 game at like 4K or even 8K natively. You might even get some better frame rates sometimes or something like that, better load times. But so far, they haven't even hinted at any of that prior to 4, and I really don't think they're going to do it. Some people are saying, oh, they had that one graphic during the conference where there was empty space below the PS4 stuff, so that means that they're going to talk about it later, and they didn't mention it, and since backwards compatibility is irrelevant to most developers, they didn't really need to talk about it at a conference, and that's true, but I'm not even being cynical. I don't consider this me being cynical. I just think I'm being realistic. Sony has dropped the ball in a lot of ways these past few generations. They may have won the current generation technically, at least when it comes to Microsoft, but when it comes to so many other things, especially backwards compatibility, they completely dropped the ball with the PS4, and I think they're dropping it again with the PS5. Obviously, with the PS4, you can cut them some slack because brute forcing PS2 with those 8 weak-ass Jaguar cars wasn't really feasible from a universal standpoint, let alone PS3. That just definitely wasn't going to fucking happen anytime soon, regardless of how much quote-unquote optimization there was going to be. So, I so far, and I'm not just like declaring it a failure right now because obviously Sony's going to have a different point where they talk about more of the features of the PS5, and who knows, maybe there is going to be some BC down the line, but I'm not really banking on it because even Jason Schreier has said that in response to the rumors of PS5 having universal BC, he said that he talked to some people in the industry and no one really knew anything about it, or no one could say anything about it, but the people who did talk to him, a lot of them just laughed at the concept, saying that has got very little chance of happening. I don't know why they say very little, because from a technical perspective, Sony definitely could do it for all of those consoles, the PS1, the PS2, the PS3, even the PSP. Zen 2, when it comes to performance per clock, can definitely brute force it, especially if they just actually put any effort into it. But I don't think they're going to do it. They're just going to focus on the PS5, and they're going to talk about their half-assed PS4 backwards compatibility, and then they're just going to fucking pretend that no one cares about backwards compatibility for anything else, and they're never going to acknowledge it again. And you already had Jim Ryan talking about like why would anybody play older games? He was shitting on the very concept of it. I just don't think it's feasible. It's feasible in theory, but they're not going to do it because they fucking suck dick. And that's, if they don't do it, which I don't think they are, there's very little chance I'm going to actually go buy one of these consoles, because I haven't seen anything really remotely hype worthy. Like, I like the fucking SSD, the actual next generation transfer times and just performance. I like that. I like the audio. But as it stands, everything else is just, for both consoles, both companies, it's just, it's just underwhelming. It's just, graphics are getting better, and that's cool, but yeah, I'm excited for ray tracing somewhat, but, when are we going to see games that aren't just, like, throwing it in there just to have it, and then they actually, like, build a game around it? I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, that's it for this fucking pointless, terribly conceived, rambling video. Take care. Peace.